folks, that was one of the craziest trading days I've ever seen in my life in the stock market over the past 14 years. Absolutely insanity. We got a lot to go through in today's video, so we're just going to jump right in here at the start. Looking at the NASDAQ, this was one of the biggest intraday moves we've ever seen in the history of the NASDAQ, essentially, if not the biggest, in terms of, the market ended up finishing up. I took this screenshot, by the way, almost an hour before the market ended up closing. But the NASDAQ ended up finishing up over like 3.3% essentially. And it was down well over 3% at the open this morning. I mean, it was like in the 12.5 range. And from the 12.5 range, it just went up and up and up and up throughout the day and ended up being a great green day after everybody was convinced today was going to be horrible. Next up here is looking at the Dow. So we opened in the low 32s. Next thing you know, we're at 33. Later on in the trading day, Dow actually finishes green. Yes, green. I mean, just incredible, right? Look at the VIX. So the VIX opens this morning around 37, extremely high. Like, anything over 30 is extremely high. But 37 is like getting ridiculous, right? And by the end of the trading day, VIX was all the way down to roughly around a 30. So this basically, what this shows you is how much volatility is in the market at a particular time. And this is just looking at today's trading day, just to give you some reference. Still, even at the lows of the day at 30, you got to understand that it's still high. It's not as high as at 37, but this is where we're usually at somewhere in here roughly, a 20, 15, that's where we're usually at. So when you're talking about pushing 30, you're just in a very, very volatile market. Obviously, ever since Rona started, we've just been naturally in a very volatile market. And a lot of moving parts. You got supply chains messed up. You have government pumping money. You have inflation. You have the Fed making all these adjustments. You got this Russia situation. So because of Rona, it just created us into this ultra volatile market we're in, right? Now, eventually this is going to die down and we're going to get more into the normal ranges and we'll get into that, let's say 10 to 20 range, which is where we'll settle at. But for right now, it is still a very, very volatile market, but that volatility just ended up dying today. Just completely, just boom, it was just gone essentially. You look at something like Tesla shares, there were folks and funds selling out of the stock first thing this morning, right? Because a lot of folks looked at this and they're like, oh my gosh, market's tanking, right? And so you've had a lot of people that are, let's call them stronger hands, that have made it through the inflation worries and made it through the Fed worries and all these things. But this Russia thing, this was the last straw that put them overboard. They're like, that's it, I'm out, okay? And so, you had folks selling Tesla, just above $700 this morning at the open. And when I took the screenshot, Tesla was $783. I believe Tesla ended up finishing over $800 today. Let me check on that. Yes, Tesla did finish the day over $800. And think about that for a moment, right? Somebody was out there selling those shares. They're selling. There's got to be a buyer on the other side. That buyer's just like, gimme. I'll buy a 705. I'll buy a 710. And the stock ends up finishing 800. Positive. And it wasn't like this just happened with Tesla stock today. There's so many stocks this happened with today. It was insane, right? I mean, it's stock after stock after stock. Look at Netflix this morning. This one was selling off to a new multi-year low, essentially. Netflix 357, 355 range this morning. And by the end of the trading day, it was approaching $400. Now, it's a multi-year low for Netflix as of this morning. It just was getting absolutely decimated, right? Look at Palantir. Palantir had a 9 in front of it this morning. A 9, okay? Crazy. This stock was like $9.80, $9.70, something like that this morning. And next thing you know, it was approaching $12 by the close of the market. When you see these type of moves, it's I would call it almost sad though, because at the end of the day, I feel like some of these folks were probably the last bunch of, let's call them strong hand retail folks that maybe just couldn't make it through this one, right? They're like, man, I've made it through so much, but you know what? This is the one that puts me out. This whole Russia situation, I'm jumping out of the market. So they're selling Palantir this morning at $9.80, $9.90, $10, $10.20, $10.40, and by the end of the trading day, Palantir is approaching $12. And that's what happens in these sorts of markets. There's always like the what I call capitulation events that just put some folks over. And it's not just individual investors; it can be funds as well, where they're just like, that's it. I'm getting out of this position. I'm selling this off. I'm going to rotate this money to gold now, or to oil and gas stocks, or whatever. And they're just like, they throw in the towel, they throw in the cards essentially. And it's usually, it's usually at the worst time, but it happens time and time again. You look at something like Square. Square has already been selling off way too hard. way too hard for this stock, right? I mean, it's just been insane. And this morning, the stock opens at $83 or so. By the end of the trading day, it's approaching $95 roughly. And this is a stock that's just way oversold in general. Like, for it to get that big of a sell-off there is just insanity. Just pure insanity, and just everybody just dumping shares left and right. Okay, and we'll get into why there's several reasons why I think this is happening. Essentially, you look at PayPal. You want to talk about stock that is a huge market cap that's easy money over the coming years and is just sold off way too hard. There were folks and funds out there selling the stock at $94 this morning, $93, and 90, 95, 96, 97, and by the end of the trading day, it was back to 105. And by the way, this one has so much to run over the next few years; it's not even funny. But it's incredible to see these kind of sell-offs. Look at the Chef. The Chef opens down. This is obviously a very heavy retail investor name. I wouldn't call it a big, PayPal. This is controlled really by hedge funds and big institutions, right? Tattoo Chef's, I think, more controlled by smaller investors, retail folks like myself, right? So when it comes to the Tattoo Chef, right? There were folks that decided to just say, you know what, that's it. I'm out of this market. I'm selling off, and they were selling the stock at $11, at $11.10, and $11.20 this morning, and just jumping out and deciding that's it. And sometimes it's best in these sorts of markets to just take a step back and be like, does this Russia thing affect Tattoo Chef's business at all? It really doesn't. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter when you're in a fear market whether this stuff affects these stocks or doesn't affect these stocks. It's irrelevant in this sort of market. It's just people just sell, and certain other individuals are obviously buying. Now, this morning, what I call that essentially, it's what I call a capitulation shakeout that happened this morning. A capitulation shakeout where you have what a lot of folks would have considered the worst case scenario end up happening, right? Which is Russia actually went in there, and it freaks the market out, and you see the pictures and you see the videos and you see everything going on, and a lot of folks just get shaken out. Like I said, there's a lot of folks that have made it through the inflation fears and the Fed fears and all those things, but sometimes there's that one last event, that one last thing to happen, right? That really just shakes people out. If I think about the 2020 crash in that scenario, not that many. Some people got shaken out essentially when they start hearing about this Rona thing, and it could be something potentially serious. Some people got shaken out essentially when one night there was NBA games essentially, and then just mid-game they just decided to cancel games left and right. That's when some folks got shaken out. They're like, oh my gosh, the NBA is going to all of a sudden cancel their season because of this? What's going on here? Because a player tested positive. And there was actually a big sell-off that next day. Some people, the last group that got shaken out was when really the global economy just was kind of being shut down essentially. And that was the last group, and that was around March 20th through March 25th roughly. And that just threw out the last group, right? That was the last capitulation event that a lot of even the stronger hands, boom, they got thrown out of, right? And some made it through. I made it through, and some of you guys watching this probably made it through, and you held through, right? And maybe even you bought during March and as we came out in April, but not everybody did. Not everybody did. Not all the funds did, and some just decided that last event was enough to say, you know what? I don't care if the stock market's gone down 20, 30, 40%, whatever it was, right? I'm out. And that's just where a lot of folks ended up being. And so today, I just look at this event here as just being a very big capitulation shakeout where all these stocks that are already down massively just had this crazy capitulation right from the open. And that's why I slept through it. I was like, I recorded a video last night at 1:30 a.m. And I listened to a PayPal conference call again for the second time. I listened to that at 2:30 a.m. or whatever, and finally went to bed around 3 a.m. And I was like, I'm sleeping through, whatever happens in the morning. If I lose a ton of money, if I make a ton of money, whatever. Well, usually the thought would have been lose a ton of money. I actually, today was a great day for my accounts. It was very, very green. Let's just put it that way, very, very green. But I went to bed and I was just like, hey, if I'm down, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 tomorrow, whatever. Cool. It is what it is. It's just part of the process that you got to understand to be a long-term investor. So I just slept. And sometimes that's just best to do when futures are tanking massively. Because if you're up during that time, guess what? You're much more likely to, maybe make some bad decisions, right? And say, crap, man, it's tanking. Let me just sell, And I think it's very, very easy to make that decision. And for a lot of folks out there, if you've been buying, you've probably already been buying, right? I think it's much more easy to sell on a day like today than to buy, right? Now, you look at the NASDAQ here. If we look at this time, this is an interesting time period. So as we climbed out of the market lows in March of 2020, which NASDAQ technically hit about 6,700, if I recall, at the lows of March of 2020, as we climbed out, there was a lot of disbelief as the market started to climb out and hit back over 7,000, then to 8,000, then to 9,000 over those next few months, because a lot of folks looked at the market and they said, why is the market going up so much so fast? There's still a lot of bad news, and there still was a lot of bad news. But the thing was, you had such a gauntlet of bad news that it caused everybody that really wanted to sell to already have sold during that March timeframe. And all you were left with was really like folks that really were actively buying out there, right? And you just didn't have much selling pressure, and you had a lot of folks that wanted to buy shares left and right because they looked at stocks that were down heavily and they saw a lot of deals out there in the market, right? And you think about back to that time frame in March of 2020, you had Bill Ackman going on TV talking about hotels could be going to zero. You had a lot of thought, there was a lot of thought process around the economy could be closed for 2 or 3 years. So you had everybody go to these very extreme views. And then when those extreme things didn't happen, the market had nowhere to go but rebound, right? And, I looked at Twitter last night, and obviously the Ukraine, was number one trending. Number 2 trending is Taiwan, because now there's all this fear about China do something in Taiwan. I think the 3rd trending thing was WW3. When you start talking about this level of fear, right? Well, shoot, now anything that's not World War III, anything that's not China, takes over Taiwan fully or something like that, is almost seen as a win. And so you get into such a fear-driven mindset that the market just starts to have priced in everything, and that's just the market you get into. And so as the market starts to bounce out, you have a lot of folks that will say, this isn't a real rally, we're going to go right back down. And there was definitely a lot of that, throughout that time. And, it just never happened, right? So eventually you just start pricing in almost everything. Look at the Dow. So this is right before the close here. Dow now in the green for the day, right? 33.2. And if I recall, the Dow today, let me look at this. So low for the day for the Dow was 32.2, and we finished at 33.2, okay? So about 1,000 point swing there. Just absolutely insane. Look at WTI. Oil was going insane, obviously, it has been going insane. But, right at the open, it opens right around 100 roughly, and next thing you know, it tanks down. That's just one of those things that everybody's flooded into. And, everybody's flooding into a lot of the oil and gas stocks right now. And, there's a lot of, how do I say it? There's so much baked into those prices. Just be careful. That's all I'll say about that. There's so much baked in right now. Be very, very careful. When everybody's flooding into something, you always should think, I need to be careful of this thing when everybody's flooding in, especially when it's a commodity-related thing. That's when you got to be very, very kind of wary. And think about even businesses that aren't really commodities. They can get it as well. Think back to when everybody was piling in Zoom stock. Think about when everybody was piling into Peloton stock, right? Think about these type of things. Think about when everybody was piling into ARK Fund. If everybody's piling into one thing, there's one thing we know consistently in the market, that's usually not the time to pile in. And if anything, it's a time to pile out when everybody's getting in that. You want to get in things usually when no one sees the vision there. And you're like one of the very few that actually is like on this thing that you see this. And, most of Wall Street and most of the funds and whatnot just aren't on that thing. All the funds, all big money is all oil, all over anything oil and gas related right now, man. You got to be careful. Okay? Now, if I look at my watch list here, holy smokes, this ain't no dang jokers. Oh my gosh, okay? Whew! The only thing that's not a joke is more than this is make sure you get your free stocks from Moomoo. Up to 5 free stocks valued up to $3,500 each from Moomoo, the professional trading platform. Check out pinned comment if you want those free stocks. Also, free TTCF share with a $100 deposit. There's nothing better in the world than getting a free TTCF share. So make sure you check out that. That's pinned comment down there. But look at this. Maxar Technologies, 14% upward move there. Palantir Technologies, a 13% plus move there. Teladoc, 11.5%. Purple, around 10%. Celsius Holdings, 9.8%. Fubo, almost 9%. The Planet had an 8.5% move here today. GoodRx, 8%. Uber, 7.8%. 7.4% on Square. That's just my watch list there, and that's just some of the best performers. You get a squeezy going on, right? You know, think about this for a moment, right? So many people are heavily short stocks, and then we got to talk about Mr. Powell and the Fed and how this changes the game for the Fed potentially. So many people have piled it into shorting everything, buying puts on these stocks, things like that, right? Making bets against these stocks. Well, you've had a pure capitulation event now where Russia actually went in there. You've had several of these events lined up all in a row, and they've caused a lot of volatility in the market. As of this morning, the NASDAQ was in bear market. As of this morning, the Russell was in bear market. As of this morning, the S&P 500 was deep into correction territory. And as of this morning, the Dow was in correction. That was all as of this morning, right? So you've had a lot baked in. So now as a short seller, you're like, man, we had Russia invade Ukraine. We have all this inflation going crazy. The market's priced in 7 rate hikes now. You have so much bad news baked into this market now that as a short seller, you got to start kind of getting a little bit fearful, like, okay, if just the market starts to get little bits, not a lot, just little bits of good news out there. Do you know what that's going to do to stock prices? Do you know what that's going to do to the Russell? Do you know what that's going to do to the NASDAQ? If you can just start getting small glimpses of good news, because we haven't had anything good news for like 100 years now, it seemed like, right? If we could just get small bits of good news, that would be such a game changer for the stock market. And you can't, as a short seller, you can't keep hoping you just get constant bad news after bad news after bad news, because eventually that ends. No different than as a long. You can't just hope that every single day you get good news, right? Now, I'm somebody that's long. I would be considered more of a perma bull, right? But I understand that not every day is going to be good. Not every month's going to be good news. Not every year is going to be good news. I'm going to have months, weeks, years filled with bad news after bad news. And it's like, can we get anything good news in this market, right? And as a short seller, you are getting such a gauntlet of bad news everywhere. And you're getting such a flush out of stocks. You're getting so much capitulation in the market with the VIX spiking, right? As a short seller, you got to consider, dang, man, I think I might actually cover right here, because it can kind of make sense. And it's like, how greedy you want to get with these stocks? So many of them are already down so substantially, right? And so I think, if you look at a lot of these moves, a lot of these stocks have, decent sized short positions. Some of them very large short positions. And I, could have went through several different pages here. You can definitely get some squeeze in action there. Mr. Powell, okay? Now, with this Russia situation, here's the thing, okay? The market's priced in 7 rate hikes, which, the market's obviously viewed that as a negative thing. The market does not like the Fed raising rates. That's just how it is, right? Well, now with this Russia-Ukraine situation, is the Fed really going to end up still raising rates 7 times? No, they definitely have a pretty easy, let's call, out with all this volatility that could be going on in the financial markets. And do they really want to be that aggressive in this sort of market? So the market is assuming, the market has been assuming that the Fed's going to be ultra aggressive. Their commentary is going to be ultra aggressive. Their moves are going to be ultra aggressive, right? Well, with all this craziness going on out there, I think the Fed is going to be maybe a little more toward the middle. I still expect the Fed to raise rates. But in terms of the aggressive commentary, I think in a time when you have a Russia invasion of Ukraine and you have geopolitical instability right now, I think that puts us in a situation where it's going to be tough to continue to raise with aggressive language, right? And especially, and I've been talking about this, and I'm going to keep talking about this, we have this month and next month for tough comps for inflation. And then it starts to get so much easier starting in April. And so when this rate of increase starts slowing quite a bit, that's going to be a game changer in terms of the way the market's thinking, and like, oh my gosh, the Fed's not going to raise rates to 10% by the end of this year. And the market just gets into this like fear-driven mindset of everything's worst case scenario. And eventually that tames down and it ends, right? So yeah, in these sorts of markets, guys, it's best to just, you either have to buy or you have to sit on your hands. But selling in these sorts of markets is consistently a bad move in a capitulation market. And it's like, it's one thing if folks don't want to buy, fair play, but to sell, and to see all that selling action in pre-market this morning, and to see all that selling action going through at the open, it's just, that's what happens every single time. It happens every single time, and it will happen in the future too. We'll get major capitulation days, and people will sell some stocks, and then they're going to look back in 2, 3, 4 years and be like, dude, remember that one day I got scared? And I know a lot of people in real life that are, talk about these days, and the problem is they keep reliving them, and like, man, I remember that day I sold all, and it's like, it's painful. It's painful to hear these stories of folks that sell at such bad prices because they get scared out of it. They capitulate out of the market. And, for all stuff that's going to pass, look at my life of 32 years and just look at all the crap we've had happen. Stuff a lot more serious than what's even going on right now. And yet, what did it all add up to? Nothing in the end for the stock market. It was just a bunch of drama in the short term, and then it just went away, and then it was up from there. And that's the thing to always remember in these situations. And I know it's hard to think it like that when you're in the situation, right? And you're actually going through it because you're a human and you have these emotions and you get caught up into the emotions, and it seems like it's the end of the world. But if you just take a step back, you realize all those other situations were just as bad, if not worse. It's just in the moment, people even thought they were worse than what this thing is, but because it's in the past now, you don't view it as being as bad, right? So that's some food for thought, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I'd love to hear from you guys in that comment section. As always, were you buying today? Were you selling today? Were you holding today? I'm sure if somebody was selling at the open, they probably won't admit that. So anyways, guys, much love. As always, appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Check out pinned comment down there for some awesome stuff, and have a great day.